Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Hi there.
Hello. I don't know why I feel like I have to channel Medea at the beginning of every podcast,
I know, right?
But I do.
Mix it up. Channel somebody else who has an amusing greeting.
I will have to... Oh, my mind just went blank.
I know, right? Wait, be Mike Myers with it. What was the Jewish coffee?
Oh my God, we'll have coffee. We'll talk.
Do that sometimes.
Legs like butter. I can't remember. It was called Coffee Talk.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Oh my God.
Then Dana Carvey had the church lady or whatever.
Could it be saved? I remember that one. I'm like, is there anybody listening who's like, who the hell is Dana Carvey?
Right? Yeah, I mean, he kind of disappeared. I mean, he did go in to do anything.
He went back to Canada.
Bye. Yeah, he really did though. He was like, done. And Mike Myers is all, I will come back every few years and do something new.
He didn't they do an Austin Powers spinoff? No. It was something about the triumvirate.
Yeah, totally different. I tried to watch it. Couldn't.
Oh, okay.
I got maybe neither Jeff nor I 15 minutes in and we're like, no, thanks.
It was like I tried watching the Willow series. I rewatched the movie and I was like, oh, that's such a cute, sweet movie. I still like the movie. And I started watching the show and I got an episode into it and I went, okay, I'll give it another episode. It didn't really captivate me, but I'll give it another episode. Watched another episode and I was like, oh, fuck, just shoot me now.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that's on there. And I rewatched the movie, probably within the last year, and was like, hey, I still really like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's the risk. Like, I was excited to see that the same actor is in it.
Yes, Warwick Davis?
Possibly.
Maybe.
I don't know. But anyway, the same actor is in it. And, but that's the risk is like, you have to modernize it, but still make it so there's enough of the original in it to appeal to the people who are watching it because they were fond of it before. Mm-hmm. And not everybody pulls that off.
And recently I binge watched in 2 nights, both seasons of Fleabag.
Yeah.
Which
finally, how many times have I recommended it?
Everybody has. And it won awards. And everybody was like, it was funny and it's twisted.
It's heartrending and twisted and inappropriate.
Well, Frida was here. She said, have you watched Fleabag? Oh, no, I haven't. We were going to sit down after dinner one night and just have a beer and see what's on TV. And I said, let's watch Fleabag. I didn't realize there were tiny little short half-hour episodes. So we went through the whole, and I said, we got to the end of that first season, and I was like,
you just want to stab her stepmother and her father in the face. Because he allows it. That's
mostly her stepmother.
Yes.
What a bad word.
She's terrible.
Oh, she's awful.
And her sister is awful, but then has like redeeming moments. And the guy who plays her sister's husband, oh my God, when I see him in other stuff now, it takes me a while to come around to him, even if he's like great.
He was I kept watching it going, where do I know him from? Stranger Things.
Yeah.
So once I figured that out, I was like, okay, now I can let that go. Because it was bugging me. I was like, what?
I've seen him in some other movies since watching that. And not somebody I like really noticed, paid attention to until that. Because, oh my God, he does awful so good.
Well, I can't wait to see I can't remember the actress who played Fleabag.
Yeah, I usually can't.
But she's obviously done stuff since then. I want to see what else she's done because she not only started that, she wrote it.
She helped write the latest. She was one of the writers on the James Bond.
Oh.
And then she's gonna be, but I don't know if she wrote on it, in the next Indiana Jones as his niece or something, I want to say.
Interesting.
She has a bigger role in it, it looks like.
Interesting.
And I'm going to like her a hell of a lot more than Shia LaBeouf.
That will get me to watch.
Yes.
Because I don't need another Indiana Jones
movie. There's a preview out. It does look... I am, of course, going to watch it. I love Indiana Jones movies. I didn't even hate that last one. I didn't love it. But
right.
I didn't hate it. It jumped some sharks.
Who are you trying to convince? Now,
me.
Have you seen Shotgun Wedding?
Yes. Watched it last night, actually.
I watched it Friday night. How did you like it?
It was cute. Actually, we were impressed with their attention to detail. You knew every time there was a Chekhov's, say, hairpiece.
Oh, yeah, they
like
reused
you knew
everything.
Something was going to get used.
Yes.
But, yeah.
The way they used it was good.
Yeah.
It was way over the top, and I thought it was fun.
It was very fun. There were times I was frustrated because I was like, you're being very dumb right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And why didn't you do this and stuff, but not enough to hurt the watching of it.
Yes, I really like Jennifer Coolidge.
Yes.
Groom's mother.
His mom. She was the best character in there, though.
Yes. I love that all the attention, all the roles she's getting now. I absolutely love that.
She was in something I watched recently as a bad guy, and she was very good at being a raging fucking bitch.
Was it White Lotus?
No.
Because
it was something about a house. But I don't remember what the name of it was anymore. It had I talked about it on here. It had Bobby whatever.
Cannavale.
Yes. He was in it as one of the main characters, but I don't remember. Anyway, she was really good at being awful, and it made me sad, and I don't like it, and I would like to just keep seeing her in comedy, please. It was like when I had to adjust to Kevin Bacon always being a bad guy. It takes me a little adjustment time.
He's always a bad guy
great.
now
He's great at it.
Yes.
And then, but...
Have you... Okay, do you follow him on TikTok?
No. Oh, wait, I see his Reels. I followed him on Reels on Facebook.
Okay, you might be getting some... Do you get the content from his farm?
Yes.
He's trying to make a
video.
video.
And when he dances and sings with his daughter. And
yes, I love it when he's trying to play the guitar and like the goats like headbutt the camera and they try chewing on his face and I love that.
Yeah. I like the ones, I would like them all, but I just don't. I haven't gone on TikTok in months. He hates it.
Oh, fair.
So I tried. Not going to happen. But I do enjoy his stuff.
That's how I feel about Twitter.
Yeah.
Even before everything that happened with Twitter, I was like, I can't do it.
Instagram was the newest one that I was like, I can do Instagram. Instead pictures, are you shitting me? Communication through pictures? That is my love language. No problem there. That's it. I don't want to talk. Twitter was all about liking to hear yourself speak. Maybe I shouldn't say that. People are going to be like, hey, how rude. But honestly, it was. I'm going to say shit. Eventually, there might be some interaction if I keep doing this. But otherwise, it's just me liking the sound of my own voice.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's kind of what TikTok is to me, too.
Kind of.
But you also like your face.
Yes.
So, it's like, it's getting increasingly narcissistic is what it is to me. So, I
can see that. I have for me, it was way easier to curate. So, I curated the hell out of Facebook. So, I don't get a bunch of assholes. So if you're my friend on Facebook, guess what? You're not an asshole. It was much harder for me to curate Twitter. I don't know why. It just felt so vile and ugly. But then again, when TikTok came around and I finally started looking at it, for some reason, I found that easier to curate as well. So get a lot of gay TikTok, get a lot of cooking TikTok.
There's stuff on there that entertains me. I just don't want to wade through all the other bullshit.
That is fair. Oh my God. Joel Osteen is now on my TikTok and I have to, when one of my children sees me next, I'll be like, get him off my fucking TikTok.
Well, also Twitter, since Musk took over, for some reason, I don't know what they've done to like boost, but he was boosting the signal of like Trump Jr. and himself. So like his posts would all show up. And so then I had to like block him and then block Trump Jr. But I had curated Twitter. I had finally, it had took me months of like, every little once in a while I'd go like, okay, I have an hour. I will sit here and go through and curate. And then I would take a picture where I left off because there was no good way to go back to my massive fucking list.
Right.
And then like on myself, and then I go back, find where I'd left off and spend another hour. So anyway, it took me ages, but I finally got it. So I was seeing good stuff and he fucked it all up. He did something, whatever. They did shit to the algorithms and I was seeing raging conservative bullshit on there. So yeah, I haven't been back there for a while either.
But because of you, I was ahead of a scandal, the horror community scandal. When it popped up on Chuck Wendig's Facebook, I went, ha! I know what that's about.
And you wouldn't have otherwise.
And then Nick, whose last name I can't pronounce, the author that starts with an M.
Oh, yeah. Mamadas?
Mamadas, that's, I think.
Yeah.
When I saw him talking about it, I'm like, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah. It's been filtering on down.
And
honestly, if somebody hadn't PM'd me, I wouldn't have known it first. But then I had enough connections, right, in the horror community that I would have eventually
You are connected.
Well, I'm trying to be less so. I've been dating people. It's
like
a problematic community.
Which community
I know, all
isn't?
communities. That's what I keep it. That's, every community. Here's why. I've already probably said this, because I wasn't a joiner in high school. I didn't care if I was liked or if I was part of something, and then had kids and suddenly I did care. And then I started trying, okay, well, why don't I be a joiner and do things? And you know what? I don't like it. I don't want to join things anymore.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think I'm done. I'm done with it. It's really not worth it. Because then you get pulled into the problematic elements.
Yes.
The least problematic community I've been part of in terms of writing was the blogging community. And there is a mix of politics and religion and all of that in there, but bloggers they don't pound on it. And since it's not as, in social media, you're more frequently putting your shit out there, right?
Yes.
And so you can put more problematic stuff out there. But there's very few, I think like 2 bloggers that I had as part of the community that I finally blocked and got rid of for being assholes. Like the one who liked to come on any post I did about Native stuff. Like I posted about the costumes, like we're not your costumes type stuff. Yeah. And he said, he came on my post like intentionally just to tell me I will wear whatever I want to wear. And you should be flattered that somebody wants to dress like an Indian and yada, yada, yada. And I was done.
Oh my.
Yeah. Douchebag.
Fuck off.
Right.
That's the answer to him.
You're like, well, I'm going to dress like you for Halloween. Wait till you see it. It's going to be a giant ball sack. That's what it's going to be. Dick. Anyway, that's it though. Really, honestly.
I would like to see that costume. I bet our listeners would like to see that costume. A giant ball sack.
Oh, that was like 2 years ago. And I haven't dressed up in years.
I know, but now I know that at least one of our listeners can sew. So I'm like...
I'm Joffrey create a big fat foam stuff he did that he
But you would have to be able to move in it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what his Batman stuff is covered in the foam that he shapes.
But that doesn't shape.
It's armor plating.
But it isn't shaped like a giant
ball
sack.
Yeah.
Well, shall we segue right into this week's topic? Has nothing whatsoever to do with ball sacks.
Yeah, now I'm thinking, no, mine doesn't either.
No, so we spent way too much time on that, but fuck, it was amusing. So, I don't know that I've ever researched a story that had more rabbit holes than this one. I did not go down all of the rabbit holes because I just was like, I can't, I will drown.
They were crazy. It was an Alice in Wonderland. Wonderland.
Yes.
Wonderland.
Some were academic, some were scientific, some were medical, and some were just frankly above my level of comprehension.
It's funny because mine is kind of the same, where it was like I could have gone into so many things, and I was finally like, you know what?
No.
They'll look it up if they're interested.
If you're interested, we will tell you how to find more information. Because I really don't know anything about cellular biology. I know this will come as a shock to some people, but I do not. That is a flaw.
I mean, I'm a little disappointed.
So, the incident I'm going to talk about had to have made big headlines when it happened. I'm sure that it did. Because, there's tons of stuff out there. It was in 2010. I do not remember it. When I came across this, it was in I can't even remember what the article was about, but I was like, ooh, tag this for possible podcast topics. Now, I had a new teenager and a preteen in my house, and that is my excuse when this happened in 2010. I was probably neck deep in Girl Scouts, too. Yeah, that ate my brain. So I came across this article, and I was like, what? Because there's so many facets to it. I was like, I can't believe I
watched something on this.
It has been on
visuals.
It has been on several of those, like True Crime and Snapped, and Snapped might not be the name of it, but
I think there is one called Snapped.
So we're going to start with, her name is Amy Bishop. She was born in April of 1965 and grew up in Massachusetts. I always want to say it the way Bugs Bunny said it, which was kind of funny. Or Daffy Duck. Massachusetts.
Oh, Daffy Duck.
Anyway,
I just know Albuquerque.
Yeah. Should have made the left turn at Albuquerque. Amy Bishop. After high school, she got a bachelor's degree from Northeastern University, Boston, which is also where her father was a professor in the art department. She earned a PhD in genetics from Harvard in 1993. So she was educated. She had to have been fairly intelligent because they don't hand those things out to everybody. However, and I found this in 2 or 3 different places, an anonymous source, and it was anonymous in every place, said at Harvard, let me back that up. An anonymous source at Harvard said her work was substandard and didn't deserve a doctoral degree. But it was just kind of, just give it to her.
But it could have just been you have to wonder, was it just an angry man?
Yes. She married a man named Jimmy Anderson, and they had 4 children together. So, an interesting side note, this comes back to writers' groups. Amy was a member of the Hamilton Writers Group in Massachusetts in the late 1990s. And it's been noted that what she stated at that time was she saw writing as her way out of academia. I'm like, really? Did you study how much money authors make? Because it doesn't exist. She has at least 3 unpublished novels. But I mean, who doesn't? One of which dealt with a female scientist main character working to defeat a pandemic and dealing with suicidal thoughts at the idea of not receiving tenure. Okay. I mean, tenure is a seriously fucked up system.
Yeah.
Anyway, her critique group members remember, I should put those 2 words together, her name-dropping Harvard a lot to establish her credibility.
Of course.
We've all been in those critique
That's why
groups.
there was a meme that went around, and I'm like, yes, from now on. And it was the whole, what I like to do with people who keep name-dropping that they went to Harvard or Yale is say, where? What is that? Oh, tell me more about that. Is it in Texas?
I love that. I'm gonna do that.
Do it.
Anyway, she name dropped Harvard all the time to establish her, her bona fides, and they also remembered her abrasive personality.
Yeah.
So apparently, I've never met anybody like that. Apparently, it was a little unclear. It said that she had an agent at one time, but none of her novels were published. And it's not, from further reading, I'm not certain that she did have an agent or she just said she had an agent.
Okay. Because it could also be that the agent couldn't place it.
Or it could be she reached out to an agent and the agent responded to her. And I'm like, that's not having an agent. That's someone being polite and responding to your mail. She worked for a time as an instructor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. She and her husband entered a portable cell incubator in a technology contest and earned $25,000 for 3rd place. I don't know. I had to look up what the fuck is that. So it is an automated way to grow cells in a lab, which in essence boils down to it's a really expensive substitute for Petri dishes. Oh. And incidentally, it was not something that doctors or researchers were looking for because there was a hands-on facet of working with the Petri dishes. That is why they got into medicine or research in the first place. They didn't want it to be automated. So they came up with this great thing that nobody
They were
asked
solving
for.
problems that didn't exist.
Yes.
I left out some things in mine for later that are the same thing. Like this person was ahead of their time and they made solutions for things people didn't want yet. Like, damn.
So, Amy went to the University of Alabama at Huntsville in 2003, joining the faculty as an assistant professor in the Department of Biological Sciences. She wasn't very popular, either with her students or with her fellow faculty, and was thought of as a not very good instructor. There were complaints made about her. Graduate level students, some of them she just dismissed out of hand, and others could not transfer away from her fast enough. Yeah. So students complained to the administration about her, as well as submitting a petition to the department heads. She was called ineffective and also odd and unsettling. So it's one thing to be a bad teacher, but it's one thing when people are like, she's not a very good teacher, and she's
actually cray.
And she's cray. So in 2009, she published an article in a Vanity Press medical journal that listed her husband, which is okay, and 3 minor children, which is not okay, as co-authors. Huh. And then the journal's website later removed the article. So I made a note here. I didn't realize vanity publishers existed in academia, and I think that was just stupid of me to not.
Right, it makes sense once you know it, but it's not something I ever thought about.
Right. So for anybody who doesn't know what a vanity publisher is, that's a publisher who sends you a letter that says, I love your manuscript. If you pay me several $1,000s, I will publish it. I will do all these wonderful things for you. And what happens is you send them money, they print the book usually, ship you the copies, and they're done. They don't.
You've just paid for copies of a book that's not being marketed by the company.
Yeah, they don't do any marketing. They don't copy. They don't edit it. They don't copy, edit it. They don't do anything.
Yeah, this is a good time to point out that if you're an author, the money should be flowing to you, not away from you. You don't pay to be published unless you're self-publishing and you're paying, say, a professional editor, a cover artist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At any rate, so yeah, and their children were little. It wasn't like they were
like, this 2-year-old helped me write
yeah.
this. Yeah.
And her husband.
If it was a parenting one, that might make sense because, like, you were citing stuff you did with them. Why am I saying like so much? What the fuck? Anyway.
Don't know. But I like it. Oh. So, in March of 2009, Amy was denied tenure. Her coworkers reportedly hated being in departmental meetings with her because of her bad attitude and her tendency to veer off on unrelated tangents in the middle of the meetings. So we've all been in those meetings.
Okay.
I once quit a board because after one meeting like that because I said, I will kill somebody. I will kill this person.
That's why we all just text each other in the board meeting.
And if the person running the meeting can't rope it in, doesn't make any effort to rope that in, it's like, So anyway, yeah, I so felt for her coworkers at this point. I digress, of course. Let's see. Amy was told that her contract would expire after the spring semester of 2010. So it wasn't like you didn't get tenure, you're out. She had a whole year. Her contract would not be renewed. She learned that one of the members of the tenure review team called her crazy. So she appealed the decision and claimed sex discrimination.
Okay.
I don't get that either. No, the colleague never retracted the remark.
Because she was actually crazy.
Yeah, and the appeal was denied. Records show that she was repeatedly told she needed to concentrate on publishing more papers. She did get some patents, like for that cellular thing. The electric petri dish, we'll call it. So she did get some patents, and they were like, that's fabulous, but you have to publish more. And she ignored it. So publish or perish, it's a phrase, but it's a real thing. If you're untenured, if you haven't gotten tenure yet, you need to publish articles in your field or you won't be given tenure. It doesn't really matter so you have to carry a full load of instructing students in whatever your field is and all that stuff and publish. Yeah. Find something that's interesting and original.
It's a fascinating world that I know very little about, but I've watched it through, say, one of my old high school friends is a professor with, tenure and doing all this stuff and has to write all the papers. And yeah.
Not getting tenure was especially hard on Amy because her husband didn't work very much. When he did work, they were usually lab jobs obtained through Amy's connections. So she was usually the sole breadwinner for the family. In February of 2010, Amy attended a biology department faculty meeting along with 12 other members of the faculty on the 3rd floor of the Shelby Center for Science and Technology. That morning, she had taught her regular anatomy class and neuroscience class as normal. Her students, everybody just reported everything just seemed as normal. 30 to 40 minutes into the meeting, shortly before 4 p.m., Amy stood up, pulled out a Ruger P95 handgun and began shooting. She was seated at the end of an oval table in front of the door. So she's essentially blocking the door. And she just shot the person closest to her in the head and went down the line of the table shooting people. The other side of the table, everybody was diving under the table. Mm-hmm. There's a biochemistry instructor, Deborah Moriarty, who considered Amy a friend. She threw her arms around Amy's legs and begged her to stop from under the table. Amy pointed the gun at her head, and it didn't fire. It just clicked. So either it was out of ammo or had jammed. And Moriarty was able to, and I think some other people helped her, pushed her out of the room and barricaded the door. And then, tried to help the people who were shot. The gun was found in the women's room on the second floor. Amy had rinsed off the gun. I have absolutely no idea why.
I mean, everybody knew she'd done the shooting. There were living people. Okay.
Yeah, she stuffed the gun and her blood-stained blazer into the trash. She was arrested just a few minutes later outside the building as she tried to leave via a loading dock. Apparently, it was not unusual for her to call her husband at the end of the day and say, or when she was done, and say, come pick me up. So she did.
Yeah.
She went into a lab. After she had gotten rid of the bloody blazer, she went into one of the labs and said to one of the lab assistants, can I borrow your cell phone to call my husband? Called her husband, hey, honey, I'm done here. Can you come pick me up? Gave the guy his phone back, but then tried to exit through a loading dock. And I'm assuming that's not
for a smart woman. She was very bad at crime.
Yes. Yes. She was very calm immediately after the shooting. Like I said, her demeanor was very, like everything was normal. Because she immediately called her husband to pick her up, the police did question him, but they released him after determining he had no role in this whatsoever.
The what the fuckery on his face was very clear.
Now, he did say that she had borrowed the Ruger several weeks earlier, and he had taken her to a shooting range in the weeks prior to the shooting so she could practice. But she knew how to use a gun. We'll come back to that in just a moment. 3 faculty members were killed and 3 were injured. And I do want to here's the thing. Before it gets weird, I want to honor the people who she killed. So killed were Gopi Podia, who, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, who was chairman of the biology department. Maria Ragland Davis, who's associate professor of biology. And Adriel D. Johnson Sr., who's also an associate professor of biology. Injured but surviving were Luis Regilio Cruz Vera, who was a biology professor, Joseph G. Leahy, who was a biology professor, and Stephanie Monticello, who was a staff assistant.
So to be clear, there was one man that she shot and the rest were women?
2, 3,
men?
4. No, she shot 4. She killed 2 men and 1 woman. And then the others were 2 men and 1 woman.
Well, it's just because the whole it's sexism thing. It came back to me.
Yeah.
You were maybe killing the wrong people if that's what you actually thought.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start with the weird, and it's just going to build. Because some of the postdoc work she did was with the herpes virus, and one of her novels described the spread of a herpes-like virus in a giant pandemic. There were rumors that she had planted a herpes bomb in the science building. But the police searched the building, and the only thing they found was the murder weapon. I
just want to revisit herpes bomb.
Herpes bomb.
Kind of. Really kind of gross on its own.
Yes. Okay, so now we're going to skip back in time to 1986. Amy Bishop was 21 years old. She fatally shot her 18-year-old brother Seth with a shotgun in their family home with a pump-action 12-gauge shotgun. One bullet went into the bedroom wall. The other one went straight into his chest. She left the house and later waved the gun at a car dealership, which was closed for the day, but some of the mechanics were there, and she waved the gun at them and demanded the keys to a vehicle, which she did not get.
Oh,
they're like, fuck off. I don't know.
You're not the first one to wave a gun at me.
So the investigation at the time ruled the shooting was an accident, despite the fact that the gun was found with a live round in the chamber. Okay, so essentially with this gun, When you fire it, the spent shell remains in the chamber. Mm-hmm. You have to rack it. That's that noise you hear in the movies.
Pop that puppy out.
Yes. And it ejects the spent one and a new one comes into the chamber. So she had to have racked it after shooting him.
Well, there were 2 shots actively. So then she racked it again. That means she racked it multiple times in this accidental shooting.
So she accidentally shot the wall, racked it, accidentally shot her brother, racked it. And just to be clear, because there was so much that went into this, when the gun was tested later, it did not accidentally go off. If you threw it on the ground or swung it around.
No, and it couldn't have twice. Come on. Give me a fucking break.
The investigation at the time ruled the shooting an accident, despite the fact the gun was found with a live round in the chamber. She was released into her mother's custody. And it was later revealed that Amy's mother was on the town council and was a political supporter of the then police chief, John Polio. Several police officers believe Polio fixed the murder, although he continues to deny it. And at any rate, detailed records of the shooting had somehow disappeared by 1988. I read several articles, and there's just so much out there you can read on this. It's really interesting how some people see it one way, and John Polio maintained till his death, no, I never fixed it. But the thing was, they had written down homicide or manslaughter. They'd written down that she had shot her brother, and then he just released her to her mother. There was no immediate follow-up. Huh. It was like they just, we're releasing her.
They just didn't care.
Yeah. These records miraculously reappeared in 2010, and the investigation was reopened after she shot up the faculty meeting.
Too late.
On June 16th, of 2010, Amy was charged with first-degree murder in her brother's death. Coincidentally, in another of those unpublished novels, the main character had tried to frighten a friend with a gun when they were both children, and the gun accidentally went off. Like, what did she put in the third fucking book? Because that's probably what she's going to do. Yeah. So, but wait, there's more.
But wait.
In 1993... Bishop and her husband were suspected of sending 2 letter bombs, which miraculously failed to go off, to Harvard Medical School professor Paul Rosenberg. He was Amy's supervisor in a neurobiology lab and had given her a negative review, which caused her to resign. The investigation never reached a conclusion and no charges were filed, even though that case was also reopened in 2010 after the university shooting.
What's the point in reopening them? It's too late.
Yeah. Well, now when they went back to... Yeah, it wasn't going to bring her brother back.
No.
She did have another run-in with police. So nothing went on her record when she shot her brother. Accidental or not, nothing went on her record. They had no proof in this one. Nothing went on her record. In 2002, Amy assaulted a woman at an International House of Pancakes restaurant.
Classy.
Because the woman had taken the last booster seat at the restaurant and refused to relinquish it to Amy. Actually, Amy went to whoever the hostess and said, we need a booster seat. They're like, oh, I'm very sorry. That woman just got the last one that we have. And Amy followed the woman and demanded it. And the woman said no, fuck off.
Right.
I think the woman just said no. That's my injection of the fuck off. And Amy punched her in the head while shouting, I am Dr. Amy Bishop. The charges were dropped. And prosecutors recommended that she attend anger management classes. Guess what? Her husband confirmed she never did.
Of course.
After shooting up the faculty meeting, Amy was charged with 1 count of capital murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. Prosecutors were going for the death penalty. Her husband visited her several times in jail, saying at various times that she was very cogent, or that she was being treated for paranoid schizophrenia, or that she had a very loose grasp on reality. So pick a day and he's going to give you a different story. It was during this time that Amy was charged with killing her brother, and she did attempt suicide. 2 days after the charges were filed. She was treated at a hospital and returned to jail. In 2012, a family member of one of Amy's victims wrote to the judge presiding over the case and asked that Amy not be given the death penalty. Officials reached out to the other victims and the other families and learned that none of them thought killing Amy was going to do anything for anybody. They said, please don't give her the death penalty. When they told Amy, we will take the death penalty off the table if you will plead guilty, she did. She agreed to that. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She appealed it the following year, but that was denied. And part of her plea deal, we will take the death penalty off the table if you will plead guilty and you will not appeal this. And then a year later, she appealed it. Tried to appeal it. Yeah. So here's another weird, just a really weird, stupid thing. She had a son who she named Seth after her brother, who was born on her brother's birthday.
Wow.
And unfortunately, he was shot and killed when he was 20 years old. And the assailant was caught, charged with manslaughter. That was all wrapped up. But it's just such a horrible...
It's crazy...
She had 3 daughters and then a son.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Coincidence.
One of the reasons that this case got so much media attention was that it didn't fit the mold. It doesn't fit what we usually think of as a mass shooter because it was a woman. She was well educated. She had a stable marriage. She was a high achiever. There were no signs of substance abuse. All these things you usually think of, she didn't have. Mm-hmm. However, I will point out she had several brushes with the law, but because she was a white woman from a good background, none of this went on her record. Would she maybe have gotten the help she obviously needed? I mean, the whole shooting of the brother there was even some speculation that she came down the stairs and swung the gun up and thought she was shooting her father. Yeah. This came out of nowhere, and I can't believe I didn't hear about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, heaven forbid. The best way to get out of crime is really to be a white woman.
Yes.
Out of trouble for a crime. Like, I know if I had been a guy, even just still a mostly white guy, I would have gotten in more legal trouble for shit that I did.
Yeah.
I admit this, and I've always acknowledged this.
I do want to cite my sources, Wikipedia, BuzzFeed, The New Yorker, and The New York Times. I will say the article that is, if you want to do a deep dive, because this person who wrote the article for The New Yorker, I couldn't have included everything, but this person went and interviewed fucking everybody involved. Interviewed her parents, interviewed her husband, interviewed John Polio, interviewed some of the detectives who worked on the case. The investigator really went to great lengths and I think really presented a very balanced view. And never says, it leaves the reader to determine, do you think in the issue of, obviously she shot the people at the faculty meeting, that is not in doubt, but did she shoot her brother or not?
Yeah, she totally did.
Well, or did she, yeah, was it on purpose? She did shoot him, was it on purpose? So, yeah, that's just,
she was a hot
fucking crazy white woman.
Yeah.
Says the crazy white woman sitting next to you.
I'm going to cover somebody who went crazy in a different way, I suppose. Philip Taylor Kramer. I don't know if people will recognize that name. I didn't actually recognize that name. I did not. On February 12th, 1995, a semi-famous bassist turned engineer disappeared in a flurry of odd activity and conspiracy theories.
Ooh.
Love a conspiracy theory. Philip Taylor Kramer was born July 12, 1952 in Youngstown, Ohio. At the age of 22, he joined the band Iron Butterfly. And if you don't know who that is, their big song you'll recognize is In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, which is supposedly supposed to be in the Garden of Eden. And it was drunk slurring, and so they kept it as it was. That song actually came just before his time. He joined, so he had to play it, of course, when they performed, but he had not been there when it was actually written and originally performed. He was the bass guitarist, but he and Ron Bushy, the original drummer, were known to get together at Denny's or hotels and write songs through the night. They would remain friends well past their time together in the band. In fact, they moved together to 2 different bands, one called Magic, one called Gold, and it wasn't until 1980 that Kramer, who most people called Taylor for the record instead of Philip, moved on from his musical career. Taylor went to college at Western States College of Engineering, where he graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering. He worked for Northrop as a contractor for the Department of Defense on a missile guidance system for a time, then went into computing, where he's known to have made great strides in facial recognition systems and fractal compression, which we'll get back to in a moment. He came from a major math and science family where he and his dad, Ray Kramer, an electrical engineer and professor, were determined to disprove some of Einstein's theories. Like they were braining it up all the time.
Yeah, that happens at my house all the time when the girls are home. Braining it up.
Braining it up. In 1990, when Taylor was 38 years old, he and Michael Jackson's brother Randy founded a company called Total Multimedia, Inc., or TMM. That's how I'll refer to it from now on.
Michael Jackson?
Yep. Randy Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah. Who knew?
My God, the scope of this story is stunning.
Stunning. Their company focused on compressing data to fit it onto CD-ROMs, specifically getting videos onto CD-ROMs at the time. Taylor was a major dreamer, and it sounds like he was a bit of a genius. He had lofty dreams, such as figuring out how to make transmissions that went faster than the speed of light. Just as the sound barrier had been broken, he felt the light barrier could also be broken and was determined to figure it out and make for instantaneous communications. This would have the added benefit of disproving one of Einstein's theories. He foresaw a time where the facial recognition system and the faster-than-light transmissions would help find a missing child within seconds of them being reported missing. That was like one of his big things that he really wanted to push for, was to be able to find somebody who was missing, which will turn out to be ironic. He was, by all reports, happy, upbeat, inspired, and almost hyper in his attempts to make a breakthrough. In 1994, TMM had to file for bankruptcy, hire new leadership, and reorganize the company, but he stayed on. Sadly, there was a lot of infighting, and it deeply impacted him, according to his wife, father, and other family members and friends. The breakthrough occurred only 2 weeks before his disappearance, and it involved those faster-than-light transmissions I already mentioned. He named it Ray's Moment, after his father, and while his father stayed mum on the actual details after his son's disappearance, it was said in an LA Times story that the revolutionary theorem, quote, would bridge the 2 disparate fields of electromagnetism and gravitation. There's so much more. Again, folks, look it up if you're into the geekery. It was fascinating, but there was no way I could cover it all, and I would have had to quote a lot of things because there was no way I could reword shit I didn't fully understand. Fascinating stuff, though. Fast forward to February 11th, 1995, when Taylor took his kids and dad out to grab something to eat. He discovered he had only 40 cents on him, and that's going to come back later. He was in the middle of a frantic work schedule, deeply involved in working into the wee hours on his laptop, and he wasn't fully present. He asked his dad for money, but his dad told him to go home and get some sleep. He said, I turned him down, not for the money, but because clearly he was not in a good headspace. He wasn't all there. He needed some rest. And he didn't do it. He did go home, but his wife Jennifer said he was up most of the night. He did try to get some sleep, but kept getting out of bed to run equations on his laptop. Because, his brain, we know this as writers, his brain was just bursting. He had ideas. He'd get up and test them out. He'd try to go to bed. New solution would pop into his head. He'd get back up.
Gotta try this. Gotta try that. Gotta try this. Gotta try that.
And he'd been in this almost manic kind of state
cycle
recently with this breakthrough. The next morning, he had to pick up one of his business partners, Greg Martini, who had been one of the original major funders of the company. There was some distrust there, but they were still friends. Martini was flying into LAX with his wife, and while they had business to discuss, they were also going out on a double date that evening in Santa Barbara. Taylor took off for the airport in his Ford Aerostar minivan. On his way there, he stopped at a hospital to visit his father-in-law, who was being treated for cancer. And there was some weird behavior manifesting already. He gave him some sort of plastic toy, and he told him, the answers are all in there. and I know you can't see it or understand it right now, but it's there. And the guy's like, all right. But he never picked up the martinis. Instead, he made a series of breathless phone calls, some to his wife, where he told her he had an amazing surprise. He said his plans had changed and that if Martini called, she should tell him to get a cab to a nearby hotel and that Taylor would pick him up at 2 p.m. In another call to her, he said, whatever happens, I'll always be with you. He called Ron Bushy to tell him he loved him. And Bushy said that he sounded like tearful. Like he'd maybe been crying. He was frantic at that point. He called several people. He called 911 then from the Ventura Freeway and told them he was going to kill himself. And I kept running across this thing. And I don't know if it was confirmed or not, because apparently it had been held back originally. They could only release a portion of his final 911 call, so it is out there to hear. But they weren't allowed to put out the second part. And he said something about OJ didn't do it. It was them. Oh. On that 911 call.
Oh.
Then he simply disappeared. He was 42 years old. That was it. That phone call, that was it.
Wow.
Neither Martini nor Bushy, who had flown into the same airport earlier that day, saw Taylor. However, 10 days after his disappearance, Jennifer Kramer got a letter in the mail from LAX Parking saying he owed parking fees because he'd only had 40 cents, see? So he had to give them an IOU and his address and stuff to send. Investigators looked into it and found he'd actually gone to the airport the day of his disappearance, and he was parked in the Delta lot for 45 minutes. But he didn't go into the airport. He didn't pick up his friend, right? He was not caught on any of the video cameras inside the airport, and it's unknown if he ever left his car or if he stayed in it the entire time. The only thing known is that something happened during that time, right? Something happened in his brain, something happened, and no one knows what. The company and the Kramer family paid for private investigators. Police sent a chopper out to search the surrounding areas, though a larger search was never launched because it's a grown-ass man. You know, they're like, all right, there was weird behavior and we did get that 911 call, so we will kind of look around in the mountains and
but
the valley.
They don't even know where to look.
No. Van will travel.
I was going to say, unless, where do you go from the airport? What was the last spot you know where he is? How do you know where to look for him?
Yeah, you don't.
So how awful for his family.
Yeah, and he did have kids. Taylor's sister Kathy felt that her brother was getting delusional before all this had happened and was heading toward a breakdown, and his wife agreed. Something was not okay. The PIs and police couldn't find anyone who had anything against him. There were also no signs of foul play. There was simply nothing. Ultimately, the family put up flyers asking for help, even offering a reward. Plenty of people called in, some claiming a man who seemed homeless, friendly, and polite fit Taylor's description. He was 6'5", Taylor, blue-eyed and blonde-haired, as was this man. The man was sighted on Mulholland Drive, Canoga Park, Long Beach, Santa Monica Pier, Agoura Hills, and all over the place. The man had filthy matted hair and dirty clothes. One couple was approached by a man fitting this description who said he needed to call his family, but had only 40 cents. The male of the couple told him to take a hike. Well, and the wife was like, you know what? I don't even think he was homeless. So they had a whole row afterwards, right? Jennifer said she received a strange phone call, which sounded like him saying hello multiple times, sounding distant. These tips led nowhere, and eventually the case drifted out of the public eye. Then on May 29th, 1999, the minivan was found in Decker Canyon, which is near Malibu, 1.5 miles east of Pacific Coast Highway. Walter Lockwood was hiking with a friend, photographing wrecked and abandoned vehicles in the canyon. I was like, how many fucking people went off the road? And then, geez, Californians. Like, we know you can't drive. Just kidding. I was born in California. I'm also not kidding. When they found the green Ford Aerostar van, the van had gone off the road, the front end demolished. Peeking in a side window, he saw what would turn out to be a femur. They were trying to decide if it was that a stick shift? Nope, it was a femur.
It was a bone.
Moving away from the van, Lockwood stepped on a portion of skull that was outside the vehicle, so the windshield was demolished. It was gone, right? And so it sounds like, I don't know, his head was outside the window. Yeah. Somehow. He said he was basically like, I definitely screamed when I stepped on that and crushed
I screamed like a little girl.
That's right. Hiking out, Lockwood notified the sheriff's department, who used a chopper to lower rescuers, who loaded the body up and where it was lifted into the chopper and taken in to be identified. It was believed the van had fallen over 400 feet from the road above. Days after it was found, the van itself was then hoisted out by helicopter so it could be investigated better. The van itself was confirmed to be Taylor's by the VIN. A wallet found in the van had his ID in it. Ultimately, dental records identified the body as belonging to Taylor. It was determined that he died of blunt force trauma, but could not be definitively said what the further cause was. As in, was it suicide, an accident, was there foul play?
Right.
They couldn't determine that. And his family has been insisting since his disappearance that foul play was involved.
Why?
Well, we're going to get
okay.
His father says that Taylor once told him that if he said he was going to commit suicide, that it was him saying he needed help. That someone was like after him or something. And that if he was killed and it was claimed to be suicide, that it would actually be murder. His wife said he'd claimed he was being followed and watched. He had also gotten into the book The Celestine Prophecies and had been claiming there were sacred signs everywhere. There's all kinds of quotes from people in his final days. The book involved reaching a higher spiritual plane, and he'd started integrating its ideas into his euphoric ravings in the weeks and months before his disappearance. And to be clear, one of the new people of leadership who was brought in after the bankruptcy was a big pusher of the Celestine Prophecies. Celestine, whatever.
Yeah. Huh.
And so that's how he'd gotten into it. At one point, right before his death, he told his sister, quote, "You've got to be centered. If you're centered, you'll be saved when the supernova happens and they come." Mm-hmm. Family, co-workers, and early investigators felt he wasn't suicidal and was in fact excited to have made his major scientific breakthrough. His father maintains the scientific advances it would have made were worth killing over, and that other companies and even the government would have reason to want to take the tech for themselves. They also reminded people he had worked for the Department of Defense before he went into this. The question becomes whether the 17 phone calls he made to family, co-workers, and friends were crazed raving, signs of a suicide or a man under threat. The 911 call points to suicide, considering he straight out said it, and he was dealing with major debt around the company. Even after the bankruptcy, he had personal debt that he'd sunk into the company, and it didn't sound like he'd also claimed bankruptcy.
Okay.
So he had that debt still. Would financial stress have beaten out the excitement of his breakthrough? Did he realize he hadn't made the breakthrough he'd had at first thought, and it made him despondent? Like, that was one of the things I wondered. Or did someone want him dead? He'd said he didn't even trust his original partners in the company, especially after they showed their greed during the bankruptcy and reorganization. His wife said he had a big thing about people being money greedy. And I don't know if maybe that came from his time in the band or something different. Maybe he'd seen an ugly side of trying to be big, right? Like we've seen in a billion movies. So this was a big thing for him. And then he saw that, right? When all this was happening. He had major aspirations, things to live for, and had showed no sign of being suicidal in the past. He was an engaged father. Could it simply be that as he drove around, he was lost in his thoughts or in a state that had him not paying attention, and he accidentally drove off the road?
That's where I was, in my head, that's where I went.
Yeah. Fascinating. That's kind of mine too, is maybe it wasn't suicide, but he's clearly just deep in his head, right? And he's driving.
Yeah.
Maybe this happens. In a Washington Post article, a Democratic representative from Ohio, James Traficant, indicated the FBI should get involved because it could have been terrorists after his technology. The FBI did look into it, but said there was no credence to this theory. I don't know why the last page didn't print, but I was almost done anyway.
I was like, that was abrupt.
Yeah, all my sources are on that page. So, I know there were several LA Times articles that I did. It's just... So there was so much more to what he did that I left out. He had a program for a local school dealing with that was CD-ROM based. And one of the things he solved that nobody was looking for was having these like moving picture ads and stuff like that that would go out on a CD-ROM. And they were like, nobody wants this. And it seemed like he was years ahead of his time on some of the stuff that he came up with.
But haven't you ever worked with someone who came up with an idea that they were all excited about, and you could understand their excitement and you could understand the achievement, but you were like, but how would that ever be used? Well, people are going to use it to do X, and you're like, well, why wouldn't they just poke it with a stick? Or,
yeah, right. Or something you're like, this would be simpler.
Yeah, people can come up with very complicated ways to make life easier that doesn't really, but...
Yes, and it may be incredibly smart in one sense, and in the other sense, it's not useful. So the thing is, there was no background talking to his family, no background of mental illness or anything like this. This was completely new behavior for him. And that's kind of where it comes from left field for them. Why suddenly was he like this? And that's what caught them.
How old was he when he disappeared?
He was 42, I believe. 42 when he disappeared and died. And frustratingly, I could never find anything that referenced, because, they talked about the sightings and the telephone call after his disappearance. Well, they couldn't, either they couldn't determine or it's just not out there. How long after he disappeared did he die? How long had he been dead? Yeah. You know what I mean? So without that, it's really hard to also determine, was he kind of crazy and wandering around in the streets and asking, because the 46 thing is so big.
Yeah, that's such a big break, though. I mean, I get the whole distracted and he's losing his grip because he's not sleeping.
He's not sleeping. They thought that the stress of the bankruptcy could have also added to that. And and he wouldn't be the first person that I've heard of that legitimately was in a good way disappeared and was found roaming places in this complete break, right? But, so it's not completely out of the ordinary. It's just, I feel like normally there's some sort of background that indicates that this could have happened.
Right. Well, this is the opposite of the woman that I talked about, who there were plenty of signs there that you don't punch another mom in the head over a booster seat. That's just, no. That's not normal behavior. I mean, I understand the rage, but...
Yes. Hey, I do actually have my last page because I realize I am on my own fucking computer. His father did indicate, this is what I was trying to remember, that he thought he'd been drugged and kidnapped, and that's why the crazy behavior on the phone. And I was like, okay, but would people kidnap him? Would people kidnap him and then be like, sure, use your phone all you want to?
And then we're going to throw you off a bridge in your car.
Yeah, we're going to drive you out to the boonies. We're going to bash your head in, and then we're going to throw you right off there. And here's the fun thing, because the whole enlightenment thing, some people thought he'd just reached that higher plane. But that was before his body got found. There were also people who thought he'd been kidnapped by UFOs. Ridiculously, there was a psychic that said he had become a god to a native tribe there. And I was like, fuck you. So, yeah. So the Emmy never said where there was anything like...
That's weird, because usually
suicide, murder.
Because usually it's a very big well. From the state of the remains, it appears that he had been dead for 15 years. Right. Or 2 seconds. Or
like... his head injury is consistent with having slammed into the windshield or something.
Although,
right? Then again, somebody stepped on the skull and it was outside the vehicle. So it could have been damaged before and flown out the window when he landed. It could have, who knows?
There's also animal what's the word?
Yeah.
Depredation?
Predation.
Whatever. The animals like to chew on and carry about.
Animal depravity.
Yeah.
Yes, there could have been tooth marks in this. There's all kinds of things. So yes. I don't know. I didn't see an actual Emmy report or anything like that. It's always helpful to find that. So I do have my sources. LA Times centerpiece, Missing Philip Taylor Kramer by Leonard Reed. A couple other articles where it was just, I got maybe a sentence extra of information. So weren't worth quoting. Historic Mysteries, Mysterious Universe, and the Washington Post. So there we go. Glad it was like, pull that up. But yeah, so it's an intriguing question. And the things they were doing that were life-changing. But then I tried to look up his dad. I say, okay, so has he taken it further? Has he had some breakthrough? No, I couldn't find anything about that. Just in giving a bunch of interviews where he was cagey about it. And I was like, okay, Ray Kramer. And then it said that, so when the car was found, the company had shut down apparently, but then I went and did a search and it shows it as active but being in Delaware now, which is interesting because it was a California business then. So it appears to have been reopened by maybe some of the partners or something like that. But when it says founding, it was one of those business pages where you can see who officially opened it. It still mentioned Randy and Taylor Kramer as the founders of it. And so anyway, that was interesting. So it is, and I did a search and I found it, and they're still doing compression and stuff like that. It still has the same focus that it did, which was interesting. Yeah. But it's not big. It's not, they certainly didn't have any breakthroughs. So if they killed him for it, they wouldn't have, because or if they did it, they couldn't figure out how to use it afterwards because they didn't have anything major that happened.
Yeah. I've never understood that, getting the idea from someone and then killing them. And I'm like, well,
but don't you want them to work on that?
There's your source. Mm-hmm. There's the person who figured it out. Maybe they'd have user tips. I don't know.
Maybe they'd be able to continue working on it and actually develop it for use for your company. Yeah. So it doesn't make any sense.
It does not.
Again, unless it was done and then they went, well, fuck, that was a mistake. But he was still with the company, so it wasn't even like, so it doesn't make sense in a variety of reasons.
Yeah, for them to kill him.
Yes, and the government, surely they would be able to find somebody who could further it if he had actually broken the light barrier.
I also, this is very sad to say, I also think the government would have done a better job covering up his disappearance.
Yeah, they wouldn't have let him call people.
Well, yeah.
In this weird escalating series of phone calls that went from, I have a great surprise for you, and I'll meet you at the hotel an hour later than was originally planned, to,
can you imagine?
I'm going to kill myself. And OJ didn't do it.
If you were the Martinis, and you're at the airport thinking this guy's going to pick you up, and you're already thinking he's a little dodgy, but you've gotten past that. You're out here for a business meeting. You're going to go out with him and his wife. And he never fucking shows up. And you don't find out till you call his house and get his wife.
Yeah.
Because we didn't all have the cell phones back then. Mm-hmm. And then, he said something came up and they didn't even have Ubers then. Get a taxi and he'll meet you at the hotel. Yeah. Then he doesn't show up. So your immediate Martinis must have been fucking pissed.
Oh, yeah.
And you get all that justifiable anger built up. And then it's like, well, he's missing now.
He's missing and he's saying crazy things on the phone, and we don't know where. And 4 years later, yeah, because I was reading a lot of the articles, the LA Times ones, for example, they hadn't found the body yet, other than a lot of the stuff I was reading. And so the wife's like, I keep being told I need to move past it because I have 2 kids to support on my own now as a realtor, and they lived in it sounded to me, because they kept saying, and I don't even remember where it was because I didn't give a shit, but it sounded like it was a ritzier area there near LA. It was, so they were doing quite well. So I imagine she ended up having to sell that house and move into something a realtor could afford on their own.
Right.
And yeah, so a year later she said, well, I have to assume now he's dead, in an interview that was then, right? But they still hadn't found the body because it was 4 years before they found the body after he disappeared. 4 years of wondering. And I'm like, really? Are there that few hikers in that area?
Especially when he said, the guy who found it said, I'm going to go take pictures of all the wrecked cars.
Yeah.
Really? If there's that many wrecked cars, nobody thought, hey, you know that
Should we ever check for bodies?
Yeah, you know that part of the road where every fucking buddy drives off? Maybe we should look down there.
That blew my mind. Because I know we joke about there being a lot of places to hide bodies in Colorado, but frankly, Coloradans like to hike.
This is true.
So bodies you can still hide, because unless you're out looking for bodies, they can, even in a shallow grave, unless there's a skull there. I see a lot of deer bones and shit like that when I go out for hike, because we have mountain lions and they're getting eaten, or they're dying naturally, or they're getting hit by a car and wandering back into the woods. So I see bones all the time. It would have to be something distinctive for me to go, oh wait, that's not a deer bone.
It would have to be a hand or a foot or a skull.
Something that's distinctly
maybe
human.
Rib cage. But it would. But just a long bone, no.
Yeah, you're like, okay, well, there was a deer killed here. So you're like, how many times do we walk past a human body and think it's a deer body? I don't know, but a car.
Now I'm like,
a car.
Yes, that's
especially one where they put out like, hey, there's this dude missing. We think he's not okay. He's not in his right state of mind. He's very tall, and he was a broad-shouldered man. He was a big guy and distinctive, and in a green Ford Aerostar van or whatever.
Well, how many Aerostar vans
probably
were
a lot.
A scabillion.
I was wondering, it never said if he was calling, if it was a cell phone or was it a car phone at that time? Because cell phones really weren't big, and they were big.
They were
like physically large, but I feel like it was mostly cell phones then. Or, sorry, car phones then.
What year?
It was, 94 or 95? 95, because he was found in 99.
Car phones, I think.
Yeah, because, so, I don't even remember thinking cell phones were much of a thing, if at all. My husband had a pager because his father was
pagers were big.
Disabled and had to be able to reach him. He had to be able to leave work if something happened school and work, if something happened to his dad. So he had a pager, but that's what we had, pagers. The drug dealers had pagers. So, and then you'd have to go find, here it is, a public phone. There were public phones. They were mounted.
Phone booths.
And and you could go and put money in it and use it.
Yep.
Because there weren't cell phones. So
I can remember
I was like, how did he keep calling people?
Yeah.
He must have had a car phone, but that amuses me to picture like a car phone, which you always see in Porsches and Lamborghinis and shit in movies back then, in a van. Right?
Well, he was a technical guy.
He was.
So he would want to have whatever, he might have wanted to have the latest thing.
Yeah. So I didn't bother. I looked into I followed the paths of the stuff he was working on, and I followed the path of the business and tried to follow the path of his dad to see if any of that had come out. But I was like, I just didn't have time to go and look and see how many people had cell phones. That just was taken for granted. Even in the articles then that he was calling people, they never questioned it or said how he was calling people.
Well, I remember working with someone in a critique group, and it was supposed to be, the story was supposed to be set in the present, and he kept talking about the car phone and it being charged or not charged or whatever, and we finally very gently said, people just have cell phones now. Yeah. And this was early on, but we were like, people don't have...
Maybe a limo could still have it or something.
Maybe, but we were like, people just don't have car phones anymore. And he's like, well, I have one.
Shit.
Well, fucking good for you. But we're telling you, as people who are your junior by many years...
Not dinosaurs.
Who are not dinosaurs. Nobody has them anymore.
Yeah. That was like laser discs.
Yes.
It was big for 20 seconds.
Yep.
And then it booped right out of there. I was rather pleased back in the day. I was all, no, laserdiscs aren't going to stick around, just like we don't do LPs anymore. Why would you think that something that size would still work? And then sure enough, so we never bought any of them. But we had friends who were insane about laserdiscs. And even after DVDs came out, we're like, no, laserdiscs are still the best. And this is the better quality. And okay. So then they come over and they're like, we could bring this over, but you don't have a laserdisc player. And we were like, you are correct. Because... it is the year 1999 and nobody has them anymore.
I have a VCR. I have a Betamax.
I have a DVD VHS combo. That's what we had for a while. Because I had the whole X-Files series on tape.
Yep. I tried to play, no, it wasn't a VHS. I tried to use my DVD player. Mm-hmm. And it said, fuck you.
Yeah, there's so many changes to how they've done it.
It was so old. Yeah. It opened and that was it. That's the only thing that functions. It opens and closes. Cup holder. And I said to Joe, I looked at Joe and he goes, yes, we can still get a DVD. I will get you a DVD. Because there's some stuff we have on DVD and I refuse to pay for a movie when I own it.
Right. No, I mean, you've been over here and we tried to do a movie night and it wasn't on because we have something called Plex. And so we have our DVDs, but we can then burn them onto this Plex and then, put our DVDs into a Rubbermaid and stick them away instead of having to have that shelf space that we had to. It was our bookshelves and our DVD shelves next to each other. Oh, yes.
Yeah. And people used to have the shelf... and it would just be full of Disney movies.
Oh yes, I had the original ones. I had the original Little Mermaid that had the penis on the cover, and then it got water damaged, and I was like, "Damn, if that was worth any money, it's done now."
Yep.
And my aunt and uncle had a whole room dedicated to their VHS movies because we're movie people, right? And so my husband and I are movie people. That's why we have the DVDs. Now we can do that, but sometimes it falls off. Sometimes when we update the server or whatever, there's a file format that doesn't work anymore, and then he has to go find the DVD and all our Rubbermaids and reburn it. And so we've had to use the DVD player. So, you know.
Well, on that note.
On that historic note. How old am I? I still have DVDs old instead of digital. I don't like digital files. I don't trust them. They can take them back. Amazon can take back your ebooks anytime they want to. They can also take back your movies anytime they want to. I'm not interested in that.
Yes.
I bought it.
I'm old enough that I have played an 8-track tape player.
I don't remember ever using an 8-track, but my grandma still had it.
Yeah.
I'd go up to her house to the coast and look at these, cartridge-looking things.
Yeah,
and be like, what the hell? I never got to use it.
And cassettes.
Oh, yeah, I had cassettes.
Did you ever tape music off the radio?
Yeah. Oh, okay. You bet. I had one, and it's actually yelling, oh, God, what is it? It's a Tori Amos song, and it's about snow. And I was sitting there, I was waiting to hear if we had school that day. Because that's how you used to find out, is they'd say it on the radio.
Yes.
Because we didn't have the interweebs to tell us. They weren't school websites and shit, which is how now it's on Facebook and the news puts it out on their social media.
At the bottom and
Yeah, it's everywhere now, but it used to be you'd sit there huddled over your radio going, okay, is it going to be a snow day? And you'd have to wait between the songs, and then they'd list all the ones that had come in, and then yours wasn't on there, and you'd wait through more songs, and it's almost time to go get the bus, and you're like, shit. So anyway, I actually had one where it was in the song starts playing, and I heard the notes, and I knew this was what I wanted to tape because it was a Tori Amos song. I started taping it, and then it starts yelling, snow day! And then right after that song taped, I found out I didn't have school that day.
Snow days.
Fabulous.
I love snow days. We will talk to you all next week. Have a good week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.